Drivers, start your engines!
Hit the pace car! What for? Because you hit every other damn thing out there, I want you to be perfect!
When I'm driving, I got a guy on the radio who talks to me. It's him, but he talks to me.
Well, I wanna be a race car driver, pretty girls eating from my hand, yeah. Wanna live a life of fun and danger, no sweating working for the man, alright.
Good evening, race fans. Welcome to the Hoobazoo Radio Network and welcome to the Drafting the Circuits program. My name is Frank Santoroski. I'll be your host for the next hour as we talk about everything racing. Joining me in the studio, as always, I have Richard Youden and Luis Torres. Fellas, what's up?
Hey, how's it going?
Been going good. Back home from Sonoma, and we'll dig into that a bit. But I do want to lead off with this Formula One race in Azerbaijan at the Baku Circuit. This race has been on the calendar for a few years now, and I distinctly remember the first time they had it. I was sitting here looking up how to pronounce Azerbaijan so I could say it on the air. And when I realized we could just call it Baku, which
easier,
is a little easier to get out of your mouth. But golly, this has become one of my favorite races. It just, the circuit itself, the picturesque scenery, and sometimes just the nature of the unpredictable nature of this race, which we saw again here. So here we are, 2 Grand Prix in a row that finished up with no Mercedes drivers on the podium. We had Sergio Perez winning the race. Now, Sergio Perez now has the distinction of being the only driver in the hybrid era to win with 2 different teams. Read that earlier.
Engine manufacturers. Is it 2 different teams or 2 different engine manufacturers?
Well, 2 different teams because he was Racing Point. Now he's Red Bull.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ricardo hasn't done it yet with McLaren.
No. I thought it was 2 different engine manufacturers rather than 2 different teams. I'm trying to think who else could have won with 2 different teams.
Well, you could think about that for a moment.
Yeah,
could be both.
Could be both. But anyway, so we did get to have the age-old theoretical question answered. What would happen if Formula One had a green-white checker? So we kind of found that out. And again, just the race. I mean, there's a lot to unpack here talking about this race. So Richard, I'll just let you lead it off. We had just a lot of things happen. We had some controversial calls with did we get the safety car out fast enough or were we too slow? Should we red flag? Should we just end the race? Lewis Hamilton had a shot at winning and pissed that away. But Richard, take it away.
Yeah, I mean, don't we all hate road courses? They're terrible. There's boring. Nothing ever happens. They're just processional races in Formula One, like Singapore and Monaco and back. Oh, no, wait, no. It's fantastic, isn't it? It's such a great place to go. It's an awesome circuit. And one of the things that makes it so hard and a good sort of differentiator for the teams is the setup's really difficult. You've got half the lap is like a Singapore or Monaco, and then the other half is like a Monza or a Spa or something. So you've got this high downforce, low downforce conundrum, basically, from a car setup point of view. And I think it's becoming more and more amplified now because the cars are getting closer in terms of outright performance. It's where do you find these little differentiations between the two? And you're really struggling to find that, in all fairness. And that's why you see, suddenly a Mercedes drop off and maybe a Ferrari resurgence or something. There's such fine lines here that if your car isn't perfectly in tune to a specific circuit, they're going to struggle. Now, in these years where in the turbo hybrid era where Mercedes have been so dominant, it has been easier for them to cope at circuits like this because they can be off the pace a little bit, but because everybody else is so behind, they've been able to get away with it. And we've seen in the last 2 races, as I say, Monaco and Azerbaijan, and there needs to be a little asterisk next to these, obviously, because they are street circuits, they are unique, and we don't know what's going to happen when we get back to a conventional track, should we say. So there is that caveat to it. But the whole weekend again, Mercedes was struggling. And both Bottas and Hamilton were never really near the top of the times in practice. And, you have to take your hat off to Lewis Hamilton to put a car that certainly didn't deserve to be where it was in second place on the grid. Now, as you mentioned earlier, there, Frank, there were certain circumstances during qualifying, especially with red flags, which probably prevented some drivers getting a full run out there and getting real lap times on the board. And Bottas did give Hamilton a tow for his quick lap, and maybe Verstappen missed out on his tow for his lap, and Leclerc, who for second week in the row put the Ferrari on pole, he got a good tow for his lap. So it wasn't maybe a true reflection of the outright pace of the teams, but still a stellar lap by Hamilton there, and he did pull that one out of the bag. No, I think qualifying lasted at least an hour and a half, maybe even a little bit longer. There's numerous red flag instances, and it did make it difficult. Lando Norris got caught out by one. A red flag came on just as he was about to get to the pit lane entry, and he didn't pit. He stayed out, which is a major infraction in any form of motorsport. If there's a red flag, the first thing you do is come down pit lane. And if it's in a position where the driver can't react, that's understandable. But I mean, he had time to come on the radio and say, "Oh, do I come into the pits or do I stay out?" And this told him to stay out. So he had time, I think, to come in there. So that I know there's been a lot of backlash from McLaren towards the FIA there and the race stewards, but I think he was justified to get that penalty in that instance. So then onto the race itself. It started the race reasonably well. Everybody's reasonably well behaved in many ways. Nothing crazy. Hamilton managed to make a good start. Leclerc started to drop back through the pack, as you'd probably expect. And then you got into a position where Verstappen and Perez, got into a 1-2 with Hamilton sitting third. And arguably, Perez could have taken the lead on the round of pit stops because his in-lap was phenomenal. But he had a slow pit stop. I think that probably cost him a second or two. So he could have got pretty close to getting ahead of Verstappen on the regular pit stops. And then the race was just, a good race. And it was sort of, a few guys on alternate strategies there. Sebastian Vettel was one of them that was looking pretty good. And Lance Stroll had stayed out on hard tyres for quite a while, I think, there. And then suddenly, just past mid-race, Stroll had a tyre failure on probably one of the fastest part of the track there. And, it was a big lick. He hit the wall pretty hard, and I'm sure it knocked the wind out of him a little bit. And it was an instantaneous tyre failure. It wasn't like a slow puncture or a delamination. The carcass, by looks of the photographs, the surface of the tyre was still intact. So it almost looks like it's failed on the shoulder of the tyre. And it's difficult to tell. It's obviously very, very difficult to tell without, analyzing the tire. But
but certainly it was. I mean, to the viewer watching the race, it was obviously instantaneous. I mean, that car just took a wild jerk and then it was out of control.
Yeah.
And to your point, he slapped the wall a ton.
Oh yeah, and these teams now in the cars, they all have pressure sensors on the tires, and the team would have seen in the real-time telemetry if there was a slow puncture, and the driver would have seen it because he would have got a warning on the dash. Instantaneous tire failure, pitched him in the wall, safety car, all that sort of business. Then on the restart from that, everything seemed to be, settling back down into the routine that you'd expect. And it looked like Verstappen was just coasting to a win. And then
coasting to a very easy win.
Laps, 4 or 5 laps to go. Exactly the same thing appeared to happen to Verstappen there. And the slight difference here was that Verstappen's failure was further down the main straight, and his car came to rest opposite the pit box or the pit lane on the start finish line there on the grid. And the teams would have to, the safety cars to stay out would have to go through the pit lane. And they don't like doing that for, it's not 100% safe. You want to try and avoid the cars going down pit lane as much as possible. So they made the decision to stop the race with 2 laps to go.
Which is an extreme rarity in Formula One.
Yes. I mean,
very
rarely do you have a red flag. I mean,
exactly.
in the last 10 years, you've probably had it 10 times. I know there's a couple of, I think Mugello last year had 2, was it?
Mugello had 2, yeah.
Yeah, but that's
Monza
highly
had
unusual. Yeah.
1. But I mean, it's, you can count on one hand the number you have a season, typically. And I mean, in the past, you only used to have it, back in the day, you only used to have a red flag when there was either damage to the circuit, like a barrier got knocked out, or a driver needed medical attention, like an ambulance or a helicopter. It was you'd never see a red flag for something that happened.
Or a lap 1 crash.
Yeah.
Occasionally, I remember a few here and there for just like torrential weather.
Yeah.
But I mean, but
in 2010, wasn't it? I think. When
I was thinking even earlier. Yeah, I was thinking even earlier in the 80s, but that shows my age.
On the whole,
red flags are rather rare.
Yeah. There's been 75 ever in Formula One compared to NASCAR. There's been like over 200 to 300 in Cup in the past 30 years.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's a rarity, but in this instance, I felt it was justified. You don't want to have the cars going through pit lane, numerous times, and there was no reason why, once the debris from Verstappen's wreck hadn't been cleared, that you couldn't restart the race. There's no reason whatsoever. So the new rule in Formula One that was introduced a couple of years ago is that post red flag, it's now a standing start. Actually, I think it could be at the discretion of the stewards. I think it is open to judgment, that one. But standing start, and it was a 2-lap shootout. Basically, as you said earlier, there, the Formula One version of a green white checker, and you had Perez on, in air quotations, pole position with Hamilton in second. You had Vettel up there on his alternate strategy. Gasly had a great strong race up there. Leclerc was up there, and a slightly jumbled pack. Bottas was still down in the pack there. He'd been struggling all weekend, and you're thinking, well, here's Verstappen going to extend his point lead in his championship to almost like 10-15 points, whatever it would have been. And now Hamilton's in prime position to win the race, get past Perez at the start and go on and win the race, which would have been, I don't want to use the word undeserved, but it would have been, a certain amount of luck to achieve that. Now, to come back to the restart of the race, the cars left the pit lane behind the safety car, pulled into their grid slots as they would on a normal start, and then it's a very short run at Baku from the start-finish line to the first corner. And Hamilton got a great start. The first thing that everybody noticed was how much steam or how much smoke was coming off his brakes sat on the line. Brakes were incredibly hot, and jumped off the line, got a great start, got ahead of Perez on the start. And as Hamilton went to brake for turn 1, he had the inside line, which was the optimum line for that corner. And then he just, front wheels locked up, no rear brakes, and just went straight on into the exit exit of turn 1 there. Perez, held station. Everybody sort of was pretty well behaved behind him for those 2 laps. So Perez takes his first win for Red Bull, and you ended up with Vettel getting his first podium at Aston Martin, and Gasly, getting his second or third or fourth podium in the last 2 seasons, I think it was. So
but I think the one thing you failed to mention right there, those 2 last laps, Gasly and Leclerc had a heck of a battle, swapping positions back and forth. Yeah, it was really. Oh yes, it was thrilling to watch because generally speaking, when we watch a Formula One race, towards the cars are really spread out. Yeah, at the end, but this here, going to the for the checkers for position in the last 2 laps of the race, with the field bunched up. I mean, it was just, I don't know who was going to come out of there with the podium for a while, because both of those guys were aggressive. Yeah.
And as a side note to that, which you're very right there, Frank, he was some fun. Norris almost got in on the act as well there. But all of that was without DRS, because DRS hadn't been re-enabled post restart. So All of that jostling for position coming down that 1.5 mile long straight they have at Baku there was purely on driver and car tire aero performance. So, yeah, thrilling stuff at the end of the race. And, great, in a way, a bittersweet day for Red Bull. Obviously, fantastic for Checo to get that win. And, we talked about this a lot on the show in the past, how Checo needed to step up. And these last 2 races, especially Baku, he's really done that. Good qualifying. He was in the way. He was the rear gunner that Verstappen needed. He did exactly what he did what he was being paid to do.
Yes, and he did a fine job of it. And then when Max,
and he took advantage.
When Max wasn't able to finish the race, he was right there, justly rewarded for his fine drive during the day.
And unfortunately, that isn't something Albon would have been able to have done. Didn't do in the opportunities that he had. He was never there to pick up the pieces. And, that was ultimately why Albon, got released or, lost his seat in that Red Bull. So there's a lot of, very interesting takeaways. The tire issue.
The biggest thing for me is the fact that, thanks to Lewis cooking the brakes there, Verstappen got away with one there, and there was no movement at the top of the order since both first and second place of points failed to score points. So, he dodged a bullet there.
Oh, without a doubt. And, number of things to say, from a technical and a racing side, the 2 perceived tire failures by Pirelli were interesting. Now, Pirelli have said that it was caused, their initial assessment is that it's caused by damage to the tire. So, you're looking at, debris on the track, shards of carbon fiber, tearing the surface of the tire and causing the instantaneous delamination and failure of the tire. It's very, very difficult to say. There's lots of data that Pirelli and the teams will have available to them, so they've obviously got to be very careful and make the correct decision and make correct announcement. Verstappen was very vocal that it was a Pirelli issue. They were on a slightly softer compound of tire to what they've run in the past there. But even though they're on a softer compound, the tire wear was still relatively minimal. And the problem they have is the drop off just isn't significant enough for teams to look to do multiple pit stops. It's been a one-stop race. Of the 6 races we've had, 6 or 7 races we've had so far this season, probably 4 of them have been one-stop races off the top of my head.
Spain not many more than that.
Yeah, Spain could have been, but Hamilton won it on a 2-stop because he had to do something to get ahead of Verstappen. Monaco was a 1-stop. Baku's been a 1-stop. So, you need, my personal preference is a 2-3 stop race. Really make the strategy guys work on this. And the problem is the penalty from doing a 2-stop race is so severe that the teams are more likely to nurse the tires to the end of the race than they are to, make that extra stop. So I think you've got to change that. I think they've really got to look at the tires and say, look, okay, the tires are going to be great. These are going to be tires you can lean on, you can push, you can be aggressive on, have a clear, separation of compounds. Your softest compound tire can do 5 to 10 laps at the start of a race. Then your mediums are 10 to 15, and your hards are 15 to 20 or whatever. But you could never take a hard tire more than 25 laps before it starts falling apart. So then that forces teams to do 2 or 3 stops during the race. And I think that would add the dynamic to it. And it's not making the sport a lottery. It's just giving the teams something else to consider and something else to work on.
Yeah, so I tend to agree with you. Yeah, because I've always thought that, some tire degradation leads to a pretty interesting race, because you've got, some differing thoughts there on how to manage that. And you got guys there who are fantastic at managing their tires and other guys who will just burn them up.
Yeah, Perez,
puts a lot in the driver's hands.
Yeah, you look at Perez back when he was at Sauber, almost 10 years ago now. He was notorious. I remember, was it Monza? He did almost 90% of the race on a single set of tires and got a podium out of nothing in a Sauber that shouldn't have been there, really. And that's what earned him moved to McLaren when I think it was when Lewis left, wasn't it? He went there and was a teammate to Jensen for a season, and it didn't quite work out for him, unfortunately. But I think it's great, he's got the opportunity and he's really grasped it, and that was fantastic. But talking about Lewis, I think we've really seen in the last, I'd say, 6 months, how Toto Wolff goes about his man management of his drivers. He's been very, very critical of George Russell on a number of occasions. To a certain extent warranted, to a certain extent, in my opinion, not so much. He criticized, the back end of last year, he said that, for Russell to get a top seat, he needs to cut out the mistakes. Well, Russell would have won in the short track at Bahrain if Mercedes, if they hadn't made mistakes. So that was not on George at all. So I thought that was a little bit uncalled for, should we say. Then Valtteri obviously had his issues at Monaco with his wheel nut basically being machined onto the rim. And, Toto turned, Valtteri stopped short of his marks. I mean, I haven't looked at the video to measure it, but it's centimeters at most that he stopped short. So if you are, no driver is good enough to get that exactly that right all the time. And if they can't cope with, that sort of issue, then they've got a problem. I mean, I'll tell you this much: the pit stop simulator that Williams have, you can program into it stopping short, stopping long, stopping with the wheels turned, stopping too far to the right, too far to the left. So the pit stop guys can practice all of these things. So I thought that was a very unfair public criticism of Valtteri there. And Valtteri, in all fairness to him, bit back a little bit and went, yeah, you know what? No, I'm not taking that. So. I was quite pleased.
Yeah, I don't blame it. That's all either on the pit crew guys or the pit equipment. No. You can't pin that on the driver. Although it's my understanding that Lewis's brake failure on the restart there, Baku,
this is my point.
That was Valtteri's fault.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Exactly. Valtteri is the new Ericsson. When it's ironic, it's the Baku when we come to that realization.
But it was Hamilton made a mistake. So Mercedes have this thing that's been coined the magic button, which is ridiculous. Basically what it is it's a button that automatically moves the brake bias to the front of the car. And in the turbo hybrid areas where you have the regenerative braking and the harvesting of power into the battery system, you can't use traditional brake, direct brake linkage. So you can't have a pedal with a master cylinder and a brake bias bar and all that sort of stuff. It would just be undrivable because you'd suddenly have huge amounts of retardation and then nothing as the regenerative system charges the battery. So it's all done electronically now. And that allows the teams to be pretty smart with some of the brake bias works. And Mercedes have this button that on the formation lap or under a safety car period, the driver will press this button, which is on the back of the steering wheel, and allows all the brake bias to the front of the car in a brake bias configuration that you'd never race under. And it puts all of the heat into the front brakes, and internally that increases the bulk temperature of the tyre, which will increase the tyre temperature at the front as well. So an optimum set of circumstances. Now, I'm sure all teams do this. Now, whether they've got a button to do it automatically or they just ask the drivers to keep adjusting the bias till it's to the front, I don't know. But what appears to have happened is come the restart, Hamilton has pressed this button, before the cars took off, or at some point he either didn't disengage it or he re-enabled it by accident. I mean, it was an accident for sure. And because he throws away potentially a race win and potentially, a huge jump in the drivers' championship standings and a huge jump in the constructors' championship standings. And come the end of the season, that could be a massive mistake that he made. However, I have not heard or read any sort of criticism coming out of Toto towards Lewis Hamilton on that. It's all been about how the team's underperformed. Well, come on, Toto. If you want to make it any more obvious where your loyalties lie, just write it on a post-it note and slap it to your forehead.
I mean, Other teams have done it.
Yeah, it's almost like Ferrari-esque with I mean, Ferrari just blatantly didn't hide it. You know, Mercedes at least a little bit coy about it. And I'm sure if Bottas was leading a race and Hamilton was second, they wouldn't try and pull like, you know, what Ferrari did in Austria back in the day or at Indy.
Or even when Massa and Alonso were a team.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think they try and pull it to that extent, but it is clear that, you know, there is this situation where Hamilton is the number one and he can't make mistakes. He's never. Now, you could argue that with George Russell, it's a little bit of tough love, hardening him a little bit with public criticism. Maybe not. You can argue that Valtteri is a very tough character. You know, he has that Scandinavian mentality, you know, and it'll just bounce off him.
Yeah, I think that's why Toto uses him as a punching bag.
Yeah,
because
is Lewis a little bit more sensitive? Does Lewis take public criticism as well? I don't know. Maybe Toto's scared of publicly criticizing Hamilton because he knows that Hamilton is his golden boy, and if he turns around and says, "Oh, Lewis made a mistake and it cost the team dearly," and you know, Lewis has to take responsibility that he's let the team down or something along those lines. Which is, if it had been Valtteri, I'm almost certain he would turn around and have said, you know, maybe he wouldn't have got that positive reaction out of, Hamilton if he'd said that. I don't know, but it's starting to wear a little bit thin, and it's becoming very obvious. It's becoming very regular, and you know, Christian Horner did that with Alex Albon at Red Bull last year, and you know, unfortunately for Alex, no disrespect, it was justified, because he was underperforming. Is Valtteri underperforming because he stopped short in his pit box by 2 centimeters? No. Is George Russell underperforming because he tried to pass Valtteri and, I would still, to my mind, a 50-50 at Imola? No. I'm very, very, very disappointed with the language and the treatment that Toto is putting onto his drivers. And I think he's going to have to be very, very, very careful because for so long he's had everything his own way. And we're starting to see a changing of the guard here with, Red Bull becoming a threat, McLaren becoming a threat with the same engine. The worst thing that you can happen as a constructor is a customer team beating you because you've got the same engine in the back of the car and these guys are doing better than you. So that points your finger solely at chassis department. So there's a lot they need to be very, very, very careful of, and I think Toto's he's playing a dangerous game here.
I agree. Now, before we move away from talking about Baku, Louise, I want to get your thoughts on the race because I know you've got a couple of things that you want to mention here. You are the king of red flag statistics.
Yeah.
So let's get your thoughts on this race before we move on and start talking about other stuff.
Honestly, I was rather surprised that Red Bull kind of quote unquote were convincing the FIA, or I don't want to say politicking, but get in the FIA's ear to stop the race because you're looking at it. Yeah, it's unfortunate. It's maddening that a 1-2 was taken away by odd circumstances with Pirelli's tire not looking too prominent. But I was thinking at that moment, it's like, why would you want to stop the race? Would you at least be content that your driver Perez would win the race? They don't have to worry about anything else, but they stopped the race, assuming maybe they want that 1-2 because of the 2-lap rule, where if the race was over, the 3 to go, they go back to 5 to go. The running order as it was for 5 to go. Then somebody was telling me that they probably would have been Verstappen would have probably not won it because of it when the accident took place, or stuff like that.
Here's a question: did Verstappen with 3 wheels on his car cross the start-finish line?
I don't think
he did,
no,
did he?
No. It was a pit entry by the time his car laid to rest.
Yeah.
Okay, so no, real quick here. Okay, explain this rule to me. So if we have a red flag with less than 2 to go,
or 75% distance have been completed, or any red flag in general where they cannot restart the race under any circumstances.
Right. So if we were to end the race right there, you said they revert scoring 5 laps prior?
2 laps prior.
2 laps prior. Okay.
I'm saying
which could have realistically resulted in Verstappen winning the race.
Essentially, but depending on when they came in the red flag and the safety car and all of that, Verstappen may have not won it. It's weird and confusing in that regard, but at that point, I'm thinking you're gonna be either a genius or a flaw for Red Bull. A genius in a way because it will give Perez a shot to prove his worth as all by himself, dealing with Lewis Hamilton in a standing start. And in that start, Hamilton had him beat, but he cooked it. Hamilton, obviously, you saw what happened that make Mark Webber scream like a little girl on the Channel 4.
Poor Mark Webber.
Yeah, that was interesting. But I was thinking to myself, like, why would you want to stop the race and maybe restart it? I understand why that was the confusing part because that's where Gasly said the comment that the U.S. took over because that's the kind of stuff you see in NASCAR or even IndyCar at Belle Isle 2019 when Rosenquist wrecked with 6 or 5 laps to go. They stopped the race. They restarted with 3 to go because you don't see red flags this deep in a race and actually resume because if they red flag at this point, 9 times out of 10, the race will be done because the 75% distance have been completed.
Yeah, I was very surprised to see Formula One restart with 2 to go, but I was happy to see it because my God, it was fun to watch.
No, it was worth it.
I personally think that the reason Red Bull were lobbying because they thought the race wouldn't be restarted. I think they thought, okay, they're going to red flag it too to get, we're not going to restart this. But there was no reason not to restart it. And just because it was 2 laps to go, even if there was 1 lap to go, you still restart it.
Plenty
it wasn't
of laps.
bad weather or anything. It wasn't bad light. There was nothing to stop you from restarting the race. So I think they made the right call, and I think they need to do it in some ways more often because I think that. I would
rather than end it under a safety car. Then
I would personally like to see them, restart safety cars from a standing start, because I have you look at what happened at
Mugello
last year, where there's this concertina effect, and it's getting worse. There's other 2 things I think that Formula One need to do under the safety car. One, you need to have a standing restart, or you have a restart zone like they do in NASCAR. And for all the criticisms I think NASCAR has, I think the reason, and I mentioned it on the show before, a restart zone is probably the one thing that Formula One could look at and go, okay, this is a good idea. Because, Baku is the prime example. And I think, what first triggered this in my mind was a couple of years ago, there was a safety car restart. And because you got this such a long straight prior to the restart, and these cars accelerate so fast, the safety car has always got to be in the pit lane before they restart, so that they because obviously you cannot overtake the safety car on a restart. So the driver who's restarting first has to back the pack up massively while still trying to warm his tires and his brakes. So he's weaving and stopping and starting and doing all this sort of stuff. And a lot of times the guys behind are trying to second guess him. And he's got to, probably his team are coaching him on when he can go based on where the safety car is and his rate of acceleration. They've probably got software that do this all for them now as well. But I think that you could well see more situations like we saw in Mugello last year, especially as we're having more and more safety cars. Because, you remember watching these races 10, 15, 20 years ago, you'd very rarely have a safety car,
No, it was, and even that prior to that, the safety car didn't even exist.
No, it wasn't until the mid-90s or early 90s that the safety car came into effect. And, it could be like a Fiat Punto or something that was a safety car. At least they've got a decent car now, which can go at a decent speed. But, in the last few years, especially with the virtual safety car and obviously post the tragic accident there with Jules Bianchi, they're trying to do this more and more, to protect the corner workers and the marshals and people like that. You've got to do that undoubtedly. So yeah, it'd be interesting to look at the figures and the number of safety cars per season over the last 20 or 30 years or so. Because I'm sure the frequency's increased massively, and it'd be interesting to look at that. And I do think you're going to have more and more instances like this, and I wouldn't be adverse to having a standing restart post safety car.
Yeah, I mean, for years and years, Formula One you had the local yellow. It wasn't until they
double waved yellow.
Yeah, the double wave yellows, but there was. There was a time where, a yellow flag or caution period was something that was specific to American style racing. But I guess they did finally come around to realizing the safety aspect of slowing the cars down while they do some cleanup on the course. So now the next race on the schedule is Circuit Gilles Villeneuve.
Nope.
Is that canceled?
Yeah, that was canceled a while back. It was supposed to be Turkey.
That's what I thought. Yeah, as I'm looking at the schedule.
Yeah, it was supposed to be Montreal. Then it was supposed
to be Sunday, June 13th, Montreal. I said, I'm pretty sure nobody's entering Canada right now. So,
and it's supposed to be Turkey. Now we're going to France in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, so now we're going to France, and then we've got an Austria. So we're doing 3 weeks in a row. France, Austria, I think is the schedule, isn't it?
I believe you're right on the money on that one, because
so it's like 20th, 27th, and 4th of July or something along those lines.
Sounds about right.
So we have a week off coming up. Now this week coming up, we will have the IndyCars will be in Detroit,
and the Cup Series will have their All-Star race.
The Cup Series will have the All-Star race. Yeah, we'll start talking about Cup here in a little bit when we get your report from Sonoma. But just a couple of IndyCar notes. We're going to Detroit. They have Santino Ferrucci has been added to the doubleheader in a third Rahal car. I guess they were happy enough with his performance at Indianapolis that Hy-Vee, which is a grocery store chain, has signed on to sponsor him for the doubleheader. So good for him. And that's a guy I enjoy watching drive an IndyCar more than I like in the Xfinity, because he seemed to struggle a little bit. But that'll be good to see him there.
In fairness, with the Xfinity, it's the first time adapting to stock cars. The second of all, is Sam Hunt Racing's first dabble of full-time competition in Xfinity, because they were a part-time team the year prior. They even shut down temporarily because of the pandemic, but only to come back stronger than ever. But the Santino's next race will be at Pocono. That's what he said to the press at Indy 500 Media Day, and he's enjoying it. In fact.
Oh yeah, no, I'm not knocking the guy. No. I enjoy him in IndyCar. I mean,
for sure.
Yeah, he's made some bold moves and has some great drives here, and generally speaking, for a guy who's got a bit of a bad rap, he's actually a pretty clean driver.
Yeah, very bold. Unless you're Connor Daly, of course, then you'll probably not say clean after Cart Day.
Yeah. But anyway, a couple other IndyCar notes before we make some picks for Detroit. And Louise, I'll let you continue your thought there in a second. But
okay.
Romain Grosjean has announced that he's going to add an oval to his schedule. He said that he had some time to spend there at Indianapolis while they were during the month of May. And I guess the lure of Indy has kind of got him to say, yeah, I'd like to run this next year. The lure of Indy is strong. It really is, because it's so it's so historic. It's some folks consider the place hallowed ground, but either way, so Grosjean's going to add Gateway to his schedule to get his get his feet wet on an oval. But I will say this for Grosjean, it's kind of really neat to me anyway, as I read through social media comments and whatnot, that the IndyCar fans have really warmed up to this guy. Everybody has like nothing but good things to say about Grosjean for the most part. So I'm sure that's got him feeling pretty good. I'm sure that's got him feeling rather welcome. The fact that he wants to add another race to his plan here, and he's had some good results. I think that he's really fitting in and enjoying it very well.
Yeah, for sure. He's really enjoyed it. Also gives him a chance. Like he's mentioned, he's never felt this confident about a season since probably the Lotus days of Formula One, or even when he was in GP2, now Formula 2, that he has felt confident about being competitive. And him going to Gateway, I know Rookie of the Year may be out of reach because McLaughlin's running the whole season compared to Johnson and Grosjean running all but the ovals. But who's to say if Grosjean has a strong doubleheader weekend? I wouldn't be surprised if he actually wins one. I'm not sure how, but it's probable because if there's a team that could probably get it done at any point, it's Dale Coyne.
Yeah, Dale Coyne has that ability to pull a rabbit out of the hat every now and again. They really do. I mean, look, it's Bourdais won a couple with them. Justin Wilson, my God, Carlos Huertas, Mike Conway have all won races with Dale Coyne. So yeah, it's Dale is not out of the mix by any stretch of the imagination because IndyCar, the field is deep and it is competitive. So
yeah,
go ahead.
Yeah, and I think and we even talked about a little bit off the year that if you probably want to give Indy a go eventually, Gateway is it's probably a good place to start off in a way. Kind of like at a qualifying session of Rockingham I watched last night a little bit. If you want to run Daytona, Rockingham is probably one of the tracks you need to do first before you go big time as far as the tracks is concerned. So I feel like Gateway is definitely the ideal choice. It's obviously the only oval race we got left.
Yeah, the only one left. Yeah, but might be a doubleheader is what we're hearing.
Could be. It could be a
doubleheader. Yeah, Gateway and or Mid Ohio may become a doubleheader to replace the canceled round in Toronto, or option 3 is we just run a 16 race season. So IndyCar is close to making a decision there, but nothing official yet.
No, nothing official quite yet in that regard. I feel like if you want to add a little bit more variety, I go with Gateway. Mid Ohio doesn't hurt for sure to have a doubleheader, but I feel like if you want to add some value to those ovals, buffer it up with a doubleheader at Gateway again. It won't hurt, honestly.
No, I want to say, Mid Ohio's got a pretty good slate of support races out there as well. So, but most of these oval races can use, a few more things to kind of round out the downtime in the schedules at an oval event. And, to your point, Gateway was pretty successful to doubleheader last year.
Yeah, it worked out quite well, unless your name is Oliver Askew and Zach Veach last time. But it worked out good. It doesn't hurt to have more ovals, even if it's the same circuit like it was with Texas. It won't hurt to have another one.
No. All right. So with that being said, before we move on and talk about the race in Sonoma, let's go ahead and let's pick us 2 winners apiece for Detroit. So Richard, who do you like for race 1 and race 2 in Detroit?
Oh boy, let's go with. He could be anybody, couldn't it? But let's go with Dixon and Newgarden.
All right, and Louise?
I'm gonna go with Herta and Pato. I'm sure you heard me say Herta and Pato.
Yep.
Yes. You said Herta and Pato. I'm sorry, I accidentally pressed the mute on my microphone. We're all prone to do that every now and again.
Yeah.
But yes, when I was picking my fantasy team for Detroit, I went with Palou and Award for races 1 and 2. But since you took Award for race 2, I'm going to go ahead and take Rosenqvist, just for the heck of it, because
he's got an act of it. It's just a matter of putting consistent finishes. And with Palou, though, he'll have his work cut up for race number 1 because he's got a 6 grid spot penalty for an engine change at the 500.
Yes. But I mean, at the end of the day, with a good pit strategy, I know Detroit is not the ideal place to make a bunch of passes, but
as we saw in 2019, if a yellow falls on your lap, you might be okay.
Yeah. But so I mean, for him, he's gonna have to just qualify the best he can, because if he ends up qualifying mid-pack, that's 6 spots back from there. But if he ends up making into the fast 6, then he's not quite as far back. To see the start finish line. So anyway, speaking of the start finish line, it was Kyle Larson at Sonoma. Is this his 2nd win of the year, or is this 3rd? Third. Okay.
Back.
So we've got Truex and Larson with 3 apiece as our repeat winners in NASCAR.
And Bowman has 2. So there's only 3 repeat winners.
Right. Yeah, that's right. I forgot Bowman picked up a 2nd one. So Louise, you were on the ground out there covering the race at Sonoma. So take it away.
Yeah, compared to most Sonoma races that I've done, that I've covered or attended, I covered 2 previous ones I attended as a fan in 3 of them. This one, out of the sunny days, excluding 13 because it was cloudy with a little bit of rain, it was sunny, but not as super warm, like 80 degrees warm, no like real warm, like hot, like no sweating hot. It was just cool, breezing a little bit. It was cool, 70, about high 70s. So that felt real nice. But the competition was basically Hendrick Motorsports stranglehold once more. The only one that amounted to be a threat that could stop Hendrick was Martin Truex Jr. He was the only one that seemed like could work his way towards the front. But at the end of these stages, that's when some drivers decide to pit, try to do some strategy and all that. That kind of denied and halted Truex's momentum. And with Kyle Larson, it was an easy straight stage wins left and right. Nobody could beat him. Nobody really could beat him. Chase Elliott tried, he couldn't. Joey Logano tried to mount a charge, he couldn't. Truex just got stuck in the being out second or third. He didn't lead a lap compared to what he's done the previous 2 Sonoma races where he won them both in pretty convincing fashion. And unlike the other Sonoma races that I've done and we've seen in the past couple of years, there was a lot of cautions towards the very end. There was a lot of them to where you made me wonder. We talk about how, Larson won the first 2 stations. I wonder how he's going to lose to this time. We were thinking maybe a late race bump or a turn 1 off at the turn number 1, which we don't really see anymore in the Cup Series compared to back then where we had spins and wrecks, or Jerry Nadeau starting on the front row, bends it in the turn number 1 and loses all the ground. All the positions he could on lap 1 in 98. But Larson just held his own. Nobody could beat Larson, period. The only way you were going to beat him if he makes a mistake or he gets in somebody else's mess or pit road woes, which you're not going to see that often with Hendrick, consider what we've seen all season. They've been pretty strong. Pretty strong. Like Bowman and Dober, they were on it. Larson at Dover, they were not. So they could have happened either way. It could have been a fast stop for Larson or not so fast one that he could have lost. But yeah, Larson, he finally got it done. He's been on the pole for each Sonoma race since 2017, but this time he finally got it done. Albeit he started on the pole based on the draw and all the metric systems and all of that wonky number crap, but he got it done.
Number crap.
like all that calculation stuff.
I know what you mean. I just love your choice of words. Made me smile.
Yeah, it's not good, but it was enjoyable. It did got a tad bit annoying because it's like, good grief, y'all stop wrecking for once. It started to feel like all these other NASCAR races towards the very end where we get a caution, then we have caution, breed cautions left and right. Fortunately, once the whole Ryan Preece, Cody Worth thing happened, it all mellowed out towards the end, and Larson was able to get that victory. 4th win for Hendrick Motorsports, 4 in a row.
Yeah, good for them. So now I gotta say this again. We've talked about this before. This is a bit of a redemption season for Kyle Larson, who was pretty much booted away from Ganassi, and he always showed a lot of potential at Ganassi. But putting everything together to get a win at the end of the day escaped him more than it fell into his lap. I think now that he's been, with the Hendrick team for the bulk of this season, which started back in February, I think he's really hit his stride. He feels comfortable with the team. His engineers feel comfortable with him. I think he's going to be tough to beat down the stretch. And I think he's got Chase Elliott a little nervous.
Oh, no question. I was the guy that basically said that he'll probably win one, be bounced out of the first round. I think he may just put himself as a legit title contender that can make it to the championship 4. The only reason why I had those doubts is because jumping into a new team, it's the old 48 team. Yes, it's the 5, but it's the original, it's the 40. What was the 48 team? We talked about it many, many times. How Hendrick's ancestry has changed to where basically what you see in the numbers are not the same team as you grew up with. Again, let me make this clear. The current 5, old 48. The current 9, old 24. Current 24, old 5. Current 48, old 88. Got it? I hope
Oh, no,
so.
I don't know. You made my head hurt. I just try to remember who's currently in what car, right? So, but speaking of Hendrick, there's another bit of a news story that's been brewing the last couple of days, and this is that Jeff Gordon, who drove most of his career with Hendrick, maybe stepping away from the broadcast booth to take a leadership role within that race organization. Now, Louise, the rumors are getting stronger and stronger, but I mean, what kind of legitimate legs do you think this story has? I mean, it's been whispered in the past or talked about in the past that Jeff Gordon is going to one day inherit the team. He holds the key to the castle, much in the same way that Tim Cedric will one day, run Penske. But Jeff's not been active with the team for a number of years. It just seems to me that we're just gonna whenever Big Rick is ready to pack it in, and a lot of these guys that are team owners will into their 70s and 80s still be very active. If you look at some of the old guys out there running teams like the aforementioned Mr. Penske. So is this a bit of a play maybe just to get Jeff in there primed and ready to go if and when something like that happens?
It's no secret. I mean, people on social media are pointing out how biased he's showing for his Hendrick drivers. It's on the telecast. And obviously you deal with Ethics 101, like in the media.
Okay, it's hard not to show bias when the cars are winning left and right.
No,
is it bias or is he just speaking the truth? Because the team is running well.
It's a bit of both. It's a bit of both.
Yeah, I was gonna say, when it's like if I sit here and say, oh, Lewis Hamilton wins a lot of Formula One races, is that a bias? It's a fact.
No, it's a fact. It depends how you express it, how it's evident, and it's tone and all of that stuff. But that's a different sort of energy. But no, it's no secret that eventually Rick will hand the keys to Jeff. It's just a matter of if and when that will be. And of course, when that happens, he'll probably have to step aside from the Fox booth and focus on keeping the Hendrick legacy alive, but with his input. I mean, he's been a co-owner of a Hendrick car since 2002 when Johnson was driving, so he's not new to this.
He's not totally out of the picture.
He even co-owned a Busch Series team with Ray Abraham for a couple of years, but that was a long time ago. But I think as the years go by, I feel like he's more in tune to what's going on. And I imagine the higher ups from Hendrick are keeping him in his ear of what's like a Hendrick or a Chad Canals and all those folks. But
I've got no doubt in my mind that Jeff Gordon possesses, the knowledge, the intelligence, the business sense, and the racing sense to be successful as a team owner one day. There's no doubt in my mind the guy has spent his whole life in the sport. You know what I mean? And even if you don't immerse yourself with that business side, what you pick up from sheer osmosis, as long as the guy's been in the sport, he's more qualified than half the guys that own some of the teams out there.
Yeah, there's some that want to expand right at a gate, like 2311 wants to expand to 2 cars. Even now, Trackhouse wants to look into becoming a 2-car operation. But I feel like with the Justin Marks, like he has the brains and all of that, the smarts that he'll do a fantastic job. But the question is, are they jumping the gun too soon with the new car and everything? I feel like if the decision is going to be made at some point, it's probably going to be this upcoming season with the new car. So Jeff knows what's going on with the new car, make sure everything is equipped, because who knows how long Rick is going to stick around. And I feel like if Rick may not want to be as involved with the new car and learn everything from the ground up again, compared to the other cars in the past, because he's got his own business as well with the dealership.
Oh, certainly, yeah. So again, like I said, this is a developing story. Now, Richard, you have any thoughts on this?
I think it's to be expected, isn't it? Really, I think it's a natural progression. A guy like Jeff Gordon is so in tune with the sport, even though he's no longer driving, that and this is no disrespect, he can contribute far more to the sport than sat in the the Fox booth there for half the season. I would expect him to leave Fox, and Fox, they can get a whole number of different guys to do his job there. You can't get that many people to go into Hendrick Motorsport and do that job. And with the relationship he's got there, the history he's got there, he's already financially involved with the team. I expect it to be a pretty smooth transition for him, really.
All right. So, Louise, what other stories we have coming out of NASCAR? We had the Xfinity guys race in Mid-Ohio, did they not?
Yes, with AJ Allmendinger getting it done. Justin Haley, I think, finished second of that one. Austin Cindric was in the mix, but he got into some trouble late in it going. Noah Gragson, his terrible season continues. Didn't even make out lap one without getting into an incident. He's just been having a terrible season. You want to talk about somebody that's in trouble? Gregson's in trouble as far as getting to that playoffs. When you have like Brandon Brown and Jeremy Clements and Ryan Sieg being consistent, Gragson has been anything but consistent with just bad luck left and right. And in the Truck Series, if I recall, there was no racing in the Truck Series. The only thing there was is ARCA West with Chase Briscoe dominating that one. He was the only Cup guy that decided to do double duty. As far as Sonoma is concerned, if we're talking about overall, Cody Ware drove both Mid-Ohio and, of course, the Cup race at Sonoma the following day. ARCA, Ty Gibbs. What else is new? At this moment, it's the question: when will Ty get the full-time deal?
When did we get Ty out of ARCA and put him in a? You know what I mean? The guy,
the whole season, probably next year.
His first Xfinity start, he wins.
He won at Charlotte, so he got 2 wins under his belt already.
Yeah, I mean, you could call him a spoiled rich kid all you want, but my gosh, the kid can drive. He really can.
Oh, he's come a long way. There's no question about it. He's come a long way, big time. Just
do you think there's any teams in the Cup Series that would take him though?
He'll be
one of them, probably one of them Toyota teams.
Yeah,
we'll see about Cup. I say we'll see about Cup, and I say 23. Yeah, he'll probably go full-time Xfinity 22 more than likely. I wouldn't doubt it. But Truck Series will go to Texas. Xfinity also will go to Texas. And then as far as the Cup, it's their all-star race.
Okay, so what's the format for the all-star race this year? Because I know it changes from time to time, and
I haven't sit down to really look at it in detail. Considering the month that I've had for going from Darlington to Indy to Sonoma, I haven't had a full chance to sit down. From what I understood, it's 6 stages, a lot of inverts, calculations, and all that jazz. And with Larson,
I read through the thing, and I'm like, my gosh, you know what I mean? If nothing else, a race should be fan friendly, where we shouldn't have to have a couple of clipboards and pens to have a take notes to know what's going on.
Yeah, we already do that enough with qualifying and the stage points and all of that stuff. Like how many points this guy gets and all of that stuff. Or like the current point system as well, it's all convoluted. Sometimes you forget. Like back in the day, you had a formula, you knew what it was. There wasn't this gigantic gap on one side of the points table or vice versa. But this all-star race at Texas, let's just hope it's passable, because it is Texas. With this current card we got, I'm not expecting much, but if I'm going to have to pick a winner, I would not be awfully surprised if Austin Dillon actually wins that one.
Well, there you go, Richard. Who do you like for the All-Star?
Oh, jeez.
I know what this crazy format. It could be anybody.
William Byron. I don't know. Is he in it? I think he's in it.
Yes, he is. Yes, he is.
Yeah, sure, yeah. So now we've got the fan vote, right?
Yes, we still have the fan vote.
So how many people are in by fan vote?
I think it's only one.
It's just one, yeah. So I saw they had released who the top 5 are right now, and they listed them alphabetically. So which
I think that's a pretty. I think one of the drivers there has got a pretty good shoe in, doesn't he?
Are we talking about Mr. Darrell Wallace?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, he's.
I wouldn't count Suarez out of that too, honestly. But I feel like Suarez could win the stage. Well, I don't. You don't know.
Is it three guys that can ride in, and then one gets the fan vote?
Correct. I think Suarez could get one of the stage wins, but if he doesn't, I think don't underestimate some of the international folks. I mean, Noren Katakayan won the most popular driver award for the Truck Series, and he only drove like 5 races before being sacked.
Huh.
Don't underestimate the international folks.
Yeah,
True.
especially with the advent of the internet and whatnot, anybody can jump on there and vote. So, yeah, but it'll be interesting to watch. But again, I fear, like I had said before, I fear that they're making it too confusing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I wonder how much legs they've got left in this All-Star race if they keep doing this.
Yeah, we're talking 6 stages. You know what I mean? And some of these stages are incredibly short as
You're
well.
going to put a damn loop-de-loop and a jump in next, aren't you?
Yeah, you got 6 stages. It's Texas. It's a Sunday, not a night race.
Yeah. Now you'll have like 3 people watching it.
It's gonna be a full capacity crowd. They're allowing full capacity. Let me make that clear.
Will they sell full capacity tickets?
Probably not.
That's the danger, isn't it? That's the danger they've got right now. Is we're going up to full capacity, and then when they don't have a full capacity, it makes them look stupid. So
it'll be stupid on everybody involved in SMI. Not so much Eddie Gossage because that's his last day.
Yeah. Poor boy Eddie. Golly, I mean, I got a love-hate relationship with Eddie Gossage, man. But yeah, he has been good for the sport and good for the track. And there's a guy that I wish well in future endeavors because he's a interesting cat, that Eddie Gossage, that's for sure.
Yep.
But I mean, that being said, my gosh, we're out of time. So I want to thank you, Richard and Louise. I want to thank the Hoobazoo Radio Network, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, and YouTube. And I want to thank you folks that listen to us every week. We'll be back in a week to talk about this all-star format and the doubleheader in Detroit. But until then, good night.
WHOOBAZOO, that's Hoobazoo.com.
Enter website.